All right. So first, as we get started here, first thing I want to say is that thus far we've tied in a lot of things between religion and ecology. And we've been talking about Christianity and ecology. We've been talking about how different branches of Christianity bring in the idea of climate with Pope Francis and Laudato Si, with the Green Patriarch, Bartholomew. And the third branch of Christianity we haven't really given that much attention to, and that is Protestantism. And Deaconess Irene is here with us as a representative of her particular church, which is it United Methodist? United Methodist.
Yes, we are still united.
United, you're still united. You're still united. So one particular church within the Protestant branch of Christianity. And she's going to share a little bit about her work with Iowa Interfaith Power and Light. She's going to share, hopefully making more deeper connections for you all on this connection between climate and religion. So let me give you a little bit more formal introduction to Irene. She spent her career working in faith-based nonprofits. She has a passion for working with people as they take their faith and act on social justice issues. Before moving to Iowa in 2018, she was the Associate Director for the Center for Public Theology at Wesley Theological Seminary in Washington, D.C. She also spent time as an organizing fellow with Faith in Public Life. In March 2020, Irene became Iowa IPL's multi-issue, IPL stands for Interfaith Power and Light.
Not a power company.
Not a power company, yeah. Organizer, and was quickly promoted to Associate Director in July of 2020. When the previous Executive Director, Matt Russell, stepped down, she became the acting executive director before earning the role of executive director. During her time at Iowa Interfaith Power and Light, she's helped expand Called to Climate Action and Faith, Farms, and Climate. She's led outreach and increased fundraising efforts, including the new Iowa Gives Green. She's a United Methodist deaconess, which I'm sure you'd share a little bit about that too, called to live a lifetime of love, justice, and service. Within the United Methodist Church, Irene is known for her advocacy in justice issues and laity inclusion. Irene holds a BS in math from Washington State University and a Master's of Divinity from Seattle University. In her spare time, she enjoys cooking with her spouse, walking her dog, spin classes, reading mystery novels, and dreaming of a more just world. So without further ado, I want to introduce you, or I want to hand over the metaphoric mic to Irene, and she's gonna, I think you're gonna enjoy this class. Thank you so much, Irene.
Oh, my pleasure. Again, Irene. So I never know what to do with the first slide. So that's why it's called to climate action. So I believe everybody is called to climate action. And this is faith-rooted climate action, but my definition of faith is very broad. To root us in, this is a religion class, right? So there's 2.4 million Iowans that identify as people of faith and conscience. So that is the broad overall term. So all faith traditions beyond Christianity are included. 2.4 million, so that's 78% of the adult population. So when I think of religion in Iowa, like there's a lot of potential for people to do really great things. I'm Deaconess Irene DeMaris, so I'm the ED of Iowa Interfaith Power and Light, and we are the state faith group that does climate work. So go us. I'm a United Methodist Deaconess. So what that means, are you guys familiar with Catholic nuns? Mm-hmm. Sisters are really cool, right? So Protestant traditions in the late 1800s created the order of Deaconess in the Lutheran, the Methodist traditions, as a way of women to be leadership in the church because we were not allowed to be clergy. Women have only been clergy in the United Methodist tradition for 100 years. Women are still not clergy in the Catholic tradition. So that was a way for women to do ministry. We can now get married. Fun fact, not Catholic nuns, but Methodist deaconesses. I have an MDiv, so what that means is I have the same degree as my spouse, who is a United Methodist pastor. So when I talk about these things, it's fun because we have the same degree. Public theology, that means this is how I do ministry in the world. And I've only been in Iowa since 2018, and I moved for my spouse. So you either move to Iowa if you're from here, or you move here, you fall in love or a job. So mine was the latter. So I want everybody to say hello, to share your name, religious affiliation, if you have one. If you're not comfortable, you do not have to share it. And one sentence on initial impressions of religion and ecology. So I'm going to start with my dear friend Kevin.
Yep. So my name is actually Hong Yi, but I go by Kevin. It makes it easier.
Oh, make it harder.
And also, yeah, my mom calls my full name whenever I get in trouble, so Kevin is a little bit easier on me. Yeah, like we were actually in class. We were talking about ecology, preservation, and it is amazing to see the adaptation for the churches and their change of directives on how they should get people together, united, and aim for preserve the environment we live in.
Yeah.
My name's Jackson. I was confirmed at the Hope Church in West Des Moines.
Okay.
And yeah, I thought that I didn't really realize there was much of a relationship between religion and ecology until before this class.
Mm-hmm.
And now I kind of see how it plays a part in today's world. So it's kind of interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Charlie, religious affiliation, Catholic. And so for religion and ecology, just like Jackson said, I wasn't really aware about how much religions played into ecologies, and just new perspective for me.
Love it.
I'm Luke. I'm a Baptist, and I thought it was interesting to see how different religions go about trying to protect the climate differently.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Abigail. I'm Lutheran. Pretty much what everybody else has said is mine. The social reaction on religions and ecology.
Awesome.
I'm Leighton. I don't have any religious affiliation, but I'm somewhat religious. I took this class because I was really interested in religion and it's such a huge part of the world. I'm actually going into environmental science and renewable energy, that field. So it's really cool to take this class and then see how a majority of it, or a large portion of it, is how it's being used to improve the environment and renewable energy and all that.
Wish I didn't have to take out all of my clean energy presentation, because you would have loved it.
I'm Carter, and I don't really have a religious affiliation. What I found really interesting was the getting new perspective on how different religions view the world and how to take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Abel. I grew up Baptist, but now I'm kind of just figuring it out. For me, seeing different religions and religious figures advocate for social justice and ecology kind of helps me see how they practice what they preach.
I'm Paul. I was brought up Catholic, and one thing that I found was interesting, at least from when I grew up in the church or in my family, it was mostly considered that usually climate issues and ecology isn't really as important it is, at least from my church or from my more conservative family. But it's interesting to see how there is actually a lot more to it than just based on first impressions.
Yeah.
I'm Evan. I don't really have a religious affiliation, but I hadn't ever really thought of religion and ecology together, so I kind of joined this class to see how different religions kind of interact with the environment.
I'm Cynthia. I'm an atheist, and I definitely think it's cool to see how like different religions can use that as a motivator to help the environment.
Yeah.
I'm JC. I don't really have a religious affiliation. So my first initial thought was just like all the new stuff because I don't really know much about religion.
My name is Jordan, and I thought it was just kind of surprising. Like I never really realized how much religion and ecology overlap until I started.
My name is Cody. I'm Baptist, and I took this class because I wanted to see how the different religions like interacted with each other and what they all said about each other.
I'm Breaker. I'm a Catholic, been through confirmation and all that, and a godparent. I've always thought religion and ecology and science and all that have been connected to each other, but it's been interesting to see how just much they connect.
Hi, I'm Brian. I grew up Catholic, but recently kind of converted to being a Baptist. And kind of like he mentioned, just the connectedness between the two. Because I feel like initially, religions and ecology, they kind of seem to butt heads. But like the more you look into it, the more you realize just how connected they are, no matter what religion you look at.
Yeah.
You don't have a religious affiliation, and I just thought it was cool how religion and ecology work together.
Awesome. Well, thank you for answering. Forgot to do this earlier, but so this is a book called Earth Prayers, and I just think some of this is a more definitely interfaith. So just the way of poetry can be a prayer, or a prayer can be poetry, or how you organize your thoughts to take action. So this is from the UN Environmental Sabbath Program. So we join with the earth and with each other to bring new life to the land, to restore the waters, to refresh the air. We join with the earth and with each other to renew the forest, to care for the plants, to protect the creatures. We join with the earth and with each other to celebrate the seas, to rejoice in the sunlight, to sing the song of the stars. We join with the earth and with each other to recreate the human community, to promote justice and peace, to remember our children. We join with the earth and with each other. We join together as many and diverse expressions of one loving mystery for the healing of the earth and the renewal of all life. That said, I think it's really important at this age to let you know that I may have a religious title, a religious degree, but my journey was not that linear. So this is my third birthday, obviously. I'm deeply United Methodist. It's again one of the branches of the Protestant tradition. Our really big groundwork is that we believe in personal acts of spirituality, and that should root us into take justice out into the world. And so that is why I do the work that I do. Is because this is how I was raised. I looked at other religions and denominations, and I was like, I just kept becoming more Methodist in seminary. But growing up, I was unsure about claiming the title as Christian, and we're talking about Christianity and traditions, because it has a lot of baggage, and sometimes I think it's important to name that, because Christianity has a lot of good stuff, but that baggage is some really negative stuff. But there's a way to reclaim and go into an identity and make it positive and be the change that you want to see in the church or your religion or as a person of morals and values, right? So the one story I have for this is, so growing up, I went to my friend, my best friend from elementary school's church, and they read this book. And this book was like, this is what heaven will look like. And it was very descriptive, right? The streets are going to be gold, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just sitting there in elementary school being like, I don't believe in this. And it really like hit me to the point where I came home and I was uncomfortable. I must have been in like second or third grade, like crazy young. And I talked to my mom, and my mom had my pastor come over and have a conversation with me. And what I was told, that it's okay to question, that doubt is a beautiful reflection of faith, and that we should never lose our sense of curiosity and wonder in the world. And so from that, my definition of God is really big. My definition is not that it's like for Christian that Jesus is the one way, truth, and light. I believe that we are all such a huge human community that there is room for everybody and different venues into what I name as the divine. But it's taken me a lot of time and a degree to get to that point. But as we move forward, I want you to sit with, what does it mean to be curious? Curious with your faith, curious with what grounds you in morals, ethics, and values. Whatever you name what that grounding force is. And I will talk about how I call that your why. So what's theology? So I didn't figure it out between. So the most simplest one I like is St. Anselm's faith-seeking understanding. That's what we're doing here. Eco-theology. So and then when I pulled Ecology's definition, so it's the study of the relationships between living organisms, including humans and their physical environment. It seeks to understand the vital connections between plants and animals in the world around them. So the root of the two is seeking understanding and figuring out what's big in the world, and honestly where we find ourselves in it and how we interact with it. I think a lot about a life-generating universe and all the beauty and abundance and how big everything is. I don't believe that religion contradicts science. That's bigger. I don't need to know everything, right? So this is actually when the Northern Lights were in Iowa a few months ago from the Des Moines Metro. So, fun fact. It's not as bright and pretty as some pictures I saw, but it was really cool to see. Again, like centering ourselves in wonder, awe, and something greater. And that's what I truly believe is one of like the beauties of Christianity at our main themes and who we are. So I did my first question about awe is, so what in the universe fills you with awe or wonder? And you can just kind of spit stuff out. What?
Like big forests. I'm like on a hike and I see giant trees and stuff.
I love that. Big forests.
Deer.
Deer?
Just like the animals.
I just said deer.
I did for a second. I did for a second too, and then I was like, wait. You do you, boo. But deer, they're so cool.
Mm-hmm.
So cool.
Mountains?
Yeah. I'm from the Pacific Northwest, so mine has just made my soul warm and happy. Anybody over here?
The stars.
Stars? Yeah.
Black holes. Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. Black holes.
I mean, technically beer works. I mean, you still have you still have to, find the enzyme and everything to ferment it and grow crops. That's related to very deeply connected Iowa with a lot of farming here. So
yeah.
And then when you drink it, you're in awe too.
I can't judge you at your age from when I was your age. Anything else? Yeah?
The sun.
The sun, yeah. Especially because we've had a couple of eclipses, right?
Mm-hmm.
So some things that I think are cool that are greater of ourselves is the fact that somehow, despite all odds, humans came to be, and we created music. We learned how to sing. We created instruments. We figured out different genres of music. How cool is music? Sound of the waves, if you're into oceans. This is science. This is a sundial in the Glendale Cemetery. It's off time because it was built before daylight savings time. But just the fact that science, that somebody like thought through and like figured out time as a concept and then built something to tell time. I think our meditation is like really a practice that I take very seriously, and when I don't do it, I feel it in my body. And actually, once I started doing it, my staff noticed there was something different about me, and that's something awesome. Our goal is to flourish. These are also things, and this is my brand new Corgi, Simon. We just got him last week from a farm in Scranton. This is my other dog. He's a 14-year-old Chihuahua. Our other Corgi, yeah, we also have 2 cats, but I'm a dog person. Sorry, cat people. But he, you know, they fill me with awe and wonder. And then I was recently back home and I went to a public park and I was just playing on the monkey bars. And I am not as good as I was younger. So finding places to flourish, I believe religions are created to make us flourish holistically. And things find joy, right? So when I think about the Bible and ecology, I think of some biblical stories, and I tried to like pull out things that people might know. So the story at the beginning of the Bible and the Hebrew scriptures, and this is also in the Quran, is the story of the Garden of Eden, right? And God provided this abundant place in a garden, but God also created choice. And so Eve and Adam were both there when they talked in the story of the serpent. So it wasn't just Eve. Adam was totally there, knew what was going on. And anyways, they left the garden and they were to steward the land and to name the animals and to do things. So it was already this whole thing of working with what I will name as God's creation. In the Quran, even in the story, God sends down a red ox to help Adam till the soil. But we don't want to till soil anymore. That's a different tangent on farming. Noah's Ark, animals, right? All the animals came together on this big ark. Logistically, I don't understand, but the story says they gathered, and as the earth was flooded, the animals were saved because the animals are beloved children of God too. The 10 Commandments, loving your neighbor as yourself. Your neighbor is not just your physical neighbor. Your neighbor is not just humans. Your neighbor is everything. Your neighbor is my dogs. Your neighbor is a grain of sand. Your neighbor is all sorts of beautiful things that we have on this planet that we are just, it's crazy that we evolved to all of this. And so when I'm talking about ecology and Christianity, it is rooted in love of your neighbor. And loving your neighbor can take a lot of forms, right? And caring for the planet is certainly one of them. Jesus' life and legacy. In Christianity, we believe that Jesus was the Son of God. That's a very long conversation about Christology if you want to have it with me at some point. Jesus is also known through the Jewish tradition. They don't believe he was the Son of God, but they believe that he was called by God. And even in Islam, Jesus is one of their prophets, up to Muhammad, blessed be his name. And so what Jesus did was, blessed are the poor, right? Blessed are the poor in spirit. He turned the loaves into fishes and said, we have enough to feed everyone. Jesus turned around the systems that were exploiting people, exploiting our planet, and turned it into something that could be better for the future. And so those are things that I think about how if I am called to be more Christ-like, climate action is how you do it, especially in today's world. So Christianity and climate. So if you grew up in this tradition, and you kind of answered this one, did you learn about creation care? What assumptions came to mind? And this is the question. Do you believe they can exist together? Christianity and climate. Anyone want to answer it?
They can exist together.
Mhm.
They both have a connection throughout, not only both within each other, especially the Bible. The Bible constantly references climate, down to the flooding in Noah's Ark is an example of climate. But climate can also reference and be referenced, can reference religion. I know there are scientists who will constantly use religion and things like the Bible when talking about climate to support different theories.
Yeah. Anyone else? It's a good thing to think about. I'm just going to assume that you all believe they can exist together. So, again, I'm United Methodist, so this is easy for me to pull. But again, all world religions have a statement of caring for the planet, right? It is the common thread of every world religion. Catholics have Laudato Si, you have Green Patriarch with the Eastern Orthodox tradition. The Protestant traditions, we all have statements. So if you're Lutheran, I heard a couple of Lutherans, right? If you Google ELCA creation care, you'll find multiple pages and things like that talk about your tradition. Baptists believe in creation care and love of stewardship. So this is the Methodist statement. We acknowledge the global impact of humanity's disregard for God's creation. Rampant industrialization and the corresponding increase in the use of fossil fuels have led to a buildup of pollutants in the Earth's atmosphere. These greenhouse gas emissions threaten to alter dramatically the Earth's climate for generations to come, with severe environmental, economic, and social implications. The adverse impacts of global climate change disproportionately affect individuals and nations least responsible for the emissions. We therefore support all efforts of the government to require mandatory reductions in greenhouse gas emissions and call on individuals, congregations, businesses, industries, and communities to reduce their emissions. So that's my specific, when I go and I talk to my people, specifically United Methodist, this is what I tell them. And this is, our theological framework, if you will. But everybody has one, and if you're struggling to find something, you can ask us, and I would love to help you find what might inspire you to take your faith and take climate action.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I remember doing an activity with Iowa Interfaith Carmelite a number of years ago at a church where all of the participants, they were from different denominations within Christianity, and their climate statement was put up around the room, and you had to go and find it, So everybody here who's a member of a Christian church, we can probably find a statement from within that church on what their thoughts are on creation and climate.
Yeah, and 10 years ago, I don't have one, 10, 20 years ago, has anyone seen a red letter Bible? So a red letter Bible is when all of things that God said are red. They tried to sell, it didn't sell too much, but I'm gonna try to find one. But they did one with climate and environment, and it was a green letter one. And you could just flip through and see how much of that was in. You can find them online, but fortunately, out of print. So when I think about Christianity and using creation care, I think about creation in crisis. WWJD, What Would Jesus Do? It was a really weird thing we did in the 90s. And I really truly believe that if Jesus was here contextually right now, Jesus would be taking climate action along with a lot of other justice actions, because we can hold multiple justice pieces at the same time. So what is the climate crisis? So the climate crisis refers to the serious problems that are being caused or are likely to be caused by changes in the planet's climate, including weather extremes, hazards, ocean acidification, sea level rise, loss of biodiversity, food and water insecurity, health risk, economic disruption, displacement, and even violent conflict. Climate change is no longer considered to accurately reflect the seriousness of the overall situation. That's heavy, right? Like, it is heavy, and yet there's hope, right? I'm not saying if you're in a rural community, you might not want to say climate crisis, say creation care or stewardship or climate change. But for audiences like this, I lean into this slide. One thing as we holistically talk about stuff, I believe that most religion, like especially Christianity, we believe in justice. We believe in the kingdom of God in the here and now, which, you know, MLK talked about the beloved community. And so we need to talk about that. So climate justice, so it's a term, more than it's a movement that acknowledges climate change can have disproportionate harm, social, economic, and public health impacts on disinvested populations. So there are 746 million people on this planet that live without electricity. Did you know that? Isn't that wild? Something that we just take for granted, right? So this impacts the developing world the most. The richest countries continue to be the world's largest polluters. Here's looking at us. Corporations push fossil fuels in the global south when clean energy is actually cheaper. That's super shady. And these people without power are feeling the impacts of climate change the greatest, right? So when we think about why all of this is important and religion's role and where we can lead in the climate crisis, these are people that we have to think about that are outside of our borders. Go really quickly over this so you know. There's health impacts on children, right? The least of these, right? Extreme heat. So when you're a child, you can't regulate heat like an adult. Prenatal impacts, like stillbirth, premature birth, and low birth rates. Many schools do not have air conditioning. Schools were predominantly built in the 70s, and guess what? Our weather has dramatically changed. So schools have been closed due to extreme coldness. It's too hot. I think about school buses with no air conditioning. I mean, we've had a really hot few weeks, right? And kids are in school. And that is an impact of this. Air pollution and pollen seasons, we're actually in high pollen right now because our pollen season is longer because our climate has changed. That's, you know, you think about high asthma rates, respiratory illnesses, fever, asthma, the fact that, you know, you have to keep taking all of your Claritin, things like that. Weather and food insecurity, it's impacting our food systems and how we're able to grow our crops, when we're able to grow our crops. Storms and flooding. Raise your hand if you lived through the derecho. Raise your hand if you've had a tornado come through your area, neck of the woods. It hit Ankeny and Des Moines. It was a block and a half away from my house in Des Moines. So these are becoming more intensified. We hit more tornadoes. We broke the record like last month of most tornadoes in a year. That's not great, right? We've had the flooding because, yeah, the rain is great, and yet it came at the same time, and that caused record flooding in Iowa, which displaces families. It impacts your drainage system and cause contaminated water. And what I didn't put in there is insurance companies are revoking insurance for people. Most people don't have flood insurance, right? And so the people, you know, in Spencer impacted by those floods might not be able to rebuild because they're not getting money from insurance. There's insurance people calling people in Des Moines because they have a tree over their home and they're being forced to cut down their trees because they don't want to pay for a branch falling down, right? These are not great things. Even worse, not even worse. Mental health impacts. So eco-anxiety. I don't know if that's a new term for you. Climate anxiety is also used. I kind of like eco better. 7 out of 10 Americans are worried about climate change. 1 out of 3 are reporting significant worry. And it's impacting people wanting to have children, right? Their eco-anxiety is doing that. And that was part of me and my spouse's conversation about not having kids and just having a menagerie of pets. But it's something that people are worried about, and they're making very serious decisions. Systemic oppression and reduced resources make marginalized communities more vulnerable to climate change impacts and adverse mental health effects. Also, our state is not great for mental health resources. So to even get mental health in this state, when I needed a therapist, when I moved to the state, because it was a hard transition, it took me 3 months to see a therapist. It also took me 3 months to see a doctor. It's not quick. And this is going to be compounding. 8 out of 10 youth is 16 to 25, everybody, feel like the generations before them failed to care for the planet. And I don't disagree with you. 3 out of 4 are afraid for the future. But feelings of climate distress are a sign that you care, and and it's not a sign that something's wrong with you. But there's hope, there's hope. So things to remember, right? Climate justice begins with recognizing key groups are differently impacted. Climate impacts really heighten inequality. Momentum is building. Just name it, you know. DMAC has the clean energy program, right? That's a big deal. And on the Christian perspective, we're stewards of God's creation. So for me, acting is a moral imperative. So my questions to you all are, what do you think religion's role in the climate crisis should be? What have you seen? You probably haven't, but maybe you have and didn't answer. Houses of worship do in terms of the climate crisis? What do you think it should be?
To get people concerned about the current climate problems going on, especially those who are, for example, Christian, should be the job of a Christian church to get those in that religion or that go to that church that don't care about the climate right now or any of the climate issues to care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
I think it's not just like religions, but everybody's. So it doesn't matter if you're religious, non-religious, if you believe in science, if you don't believe in science, whatever. Like we're overfishing oceans, we're doing all kinds of things that are bad, and we just simply like cannot live without obviously food and plants and stuff like that. And like you said, like the love of your neighbor. Like in America, we don't see farming, we don't see like waste and everything being pushed to developing countries because we're able to do that and fill their beaches with trash instead of our beaches. And it's just like the whole thing is like Earth is God's creation in some religions or ideals, and so it's like you're supposed to care for everything around you, and some people just don't care, and they think like, oh, if I just pray or go to church, then everything's fine. But it's like a giant like world-ending problem that a lot of people don't really care about at all, or think is maybe even fake, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah. Thoughts and prayers, everybody, are not good without the action to back it up, right? I usually say if I'm praying, join me in the action of prayer, because that's another rant I have if you're interested. Anybody else? Yeah?
I think that churches and other organizations that hold, like power and a voice should also speak up for like legislation regulating companies that are damaging the environment. Because of course the individual matters, but big companies releasing greenhouse gases and oils and such that they contribute.
Yeah. Religion's role is to get people to vote for their morals and values, not tell them who to vote with because that is illegal, but you can tell people to think about stewardship and creation when you are going to the polls.
Speaking of which, please go and vote.
Yeah, please vote. Don't make me ask you all your voting plans.
I think also, unfortunately, a lot of people nowadays recognize that if they weaponize religion as in like, oh, well, I'm a Christian, based or a religious based company, I can't do anything wrong. And some people may overlook certain things that they do, when in reality, they might just be saying that as a facade or something like that. And you see it a lot more now, where a lot of people like to weaponize certain religions because it caters to a large majority of the population. It's also just a really sad thing. when
Christian
religion
nationalism.
is really a beautiful thing that is meant to build everybody around this up.
Yeah. Just
Well,
wanna,
just to add to that, we could go back here, one,
the cows.
yeah, I just, one
Iowa
of the things
cows.
that I wanna remind the class too, when we started this semester, one of the things that was brought out in our readings is that, religions historically, but even today, have provided the inspiration for people to actually act. So, for example, I was talking with somebody from the city of Ames, in the city where I live, and they're trying to do this 10-year program to go over the next 10 years to encourage people to plant pollinators, particularly prairie flowers and grasses and stuff. And it's connected with food shortages. And I was talking with somebody from the city of Ames who was working for the city, and I said, we gotta talk with the churches too about this, because there's so many people and so much potential with the churches. It's one thing if the city of Ames says, hey, we gotta take care of our climate and plant prairies. It's another thing if God says we have to take care of our planet, and if you believe in God, and if you feel that if that's important to you, there's a tremendous, like you're going to talk about roots, but we need to know why we're doing things. And if there's not that strong spiritual value behind it, it's not going to have the same effect as if, because scientists will spew out facts left and right, but it doesn't necessarily galvanize people to act.
And I'm gonna give you numbers, but the thing is, as much as if you're a numbers person, if you're a stats person, and you heard I have a math degree, so clearly I am. I don't remember how to do calculus much anymore, but people respond more to stories and feelings and what you're doing. To tell a story about the pollinator garden you did, things like that. And I think religious groups are some of our historic storytellers. Yeah. Okay, religion, contextual. So, and so is climate action. So what I mean about that is, like, there are people that believe that this is a literal document. So I believe the Bible is an inspired book of our morals and values that we learn through God and the stories of the prophets and Jesus and stuff. But we have to figure out what it means today, in 2024. And we need to figure out what that looks like today, in 2024, in the state of Iowa, right? So when you think about climate action, right, like we talk a lot about clean energy in Iowa, because you know what? We do have a lot of great clean energy. We're at over 60% clean energy. We still have coal, which is fantastic. So we can talk about that, but we also have to talk about agriculture's role in clean water, or lack thereof, how we're treating our soils, our prairies, things like that. And one thing that's contextual, as I said, I want stories, not stats, but we gotta get some stats in here, because I think it really, to know your audience is also really powerful. So if someone you're talking to doesn't believe in climate change, you don't need to give them these stats. So this is from the Yale Climate Opinion study. So you can see the urban areas do have higher rates. Global warming is happening at 67%.
Now, just to clarify, 67% of Iowans
Yeah.
believe that.
Yep, global warming is happening.
It's like shockingly low.
Yeah.
That
60,
that's
that's
a little over
almost
half.
Wait till I tell you, you see the rural ones. Caused by humans. only 53%. Affecting weather, 58. Will harm plants and animals, 68. Harm future generations, 69. This is an ISU extension from the World Life Poll, and since 2011, they have been doing a climate question. 15% believe climate change is occurring by human activities. Only 40% equal natural changes and human activities. Climate change is occurring, mostly natural changes is 22. Not enough evidence to know with certainty that climate change is occurring is 20%, 3% not occurring. So that's in the rural areas of this state. And I say this, but I have been to a lot of rural areas in the state of Iowa that are doing amazing work. We just disagree on why climate's changing, and they're still taking action. But this is just something to know as you go out into the world.
That is just such fascinating information, though. I mean, you don't necessarily need to believe in climate change in order to take action. And that goes back to, so if you're rooted in a faith tradition that says you've got to take care of God's creation, it doesn't matter really.
Yeah.
What the statistics say, people will act, but connecting them with that is really important.
And honestly, like a lot of the climate smart agriculture practices are really good for the family farm. So thoughts. Of those statistics, what surprised you? We talked about anxiety and feelings, so how does this make you feel? How will you seek understanding? You don't have to answer all the questions, but I do want to hear kind of what you think. Yeah?
I'm just curious, especially in like rural Iowa, you see so many climate change deniers, and I don't know if there's like a definitive answer to this, but maybe you can answer just from people you've talked to, but what exactly is it that like makes them not want to believe it?
I feel like there's a mourning of a perceived way of life, and not wanting to change that because there's just the deep, I don't know if it's fear, but they might not believe in it, but there's other things that they believe in stewarding the land, but the jump isn't being made. And if I could figure that out, I'd be really, I'd write a grant for Iowa, I feel. But it's just a pushback. I think maybe sometimes change happens too fast, or like the pushback, but you do see that people think like, well, the earth has been through different environmental cycles, we're in one now. But I do know that when I talk to a person of faith that disagrees with me, because I get climate deniers at some of my events, because they feel safe because it's a faith group. None of the other environmental orgs get that we are starting to talk about, and I hope I put a little bit of a kink or some sort of a seed, but it really is like it's a risk to change your farming practices for climate change. If you farm for 40 years, right, you only have 40 chances. And if you change one thing and it goes bad, there's not a margin for error.
So you gotta have you're asking somebody to put their faith in something that they might not believe in. But also another thing is that I just, as you're talking, I wonder about the connection when scientists who are not necessarily believers, maybe they're atheists, maybe they're agnostic, and with the statistics doesn't necessarily come with a call to action or even a sense of purpose in life. That people of faith really, you're not going to convince somebody of faith to act if you yourself don't have a real clear sense that I'm here for a reason.
Yeah.
And a lot of scientists will deny that there's any purpose to the universe outside a random event that occurred. And that's why it's so important to include religions in the conversation when scientists are talking, to respect that, hey, we need to have a clear sense of belief, a sense of purpose, clarity, like I'm here for a reason, I'm part of a bigger narrative.
Yeah, and I will say, that you might have the right message, but the messenger is so much more important.
I'm just like kind of shocked that like people in more urban areas believe in climate change. When like this morning I woke up and I filled my water bottle with water, my water tasted fine, whatever. You know, you don't really like see a lot of things about climate change in urban urban areas, but like rural where you're hands-on with the land, like you can see the soil is getting worse, or animals are overheating, or fresh water is like soaking up, or whatever it may be. It just feels weird that like people in rural areas are like, oh, this isn't happening, even though they watch it hands-on happen in front of them. But in urban areas, people are like, oh yeah, this is definitely happening, but like it's not very noticeable because we're, you know, in cities and stuff. So I'm just like shocked that, especially when their livelihood is based on how well the climate is for them and how well their crops can grow and stuff like that, especially like harsher winters and stuff, and they're just kind of like, you know, doesn't exist, isn't real.
Yeah, it's the I think part of it is just the polarization that has happened. And this topic shouldn't have been polarized, and it is. And I get really angry when urban folks get mad at rural communities. I get really angry because it pits different communities against each other without actually trying to seek and understanding what's going on in our rural communities. And rural communities are amazing, and they do amazing things, and yet they're getting smaller. They're dealing with a lot of things that we aren't. So it's this whole thing that is pitting us versus them that also gets kind of interwoven with climate right now. And again, I really believe, in my experience, that faith has kind of been this equalizer that has allowed me into spaces that people will listen a little bit. And maybe it didn't have the impact a few years ago, but maybe it was the thing that, you know, blossoms next year. And they're like, let's do cover crops. Yeah. Oh,
I was gonna say that, like, both my parents grew up in Northwest Iowa, and whenever we go up to Grandma and Grandpa's, it's all farmland for like the last half hour, 45 minutes. I would say that I think part of the reason you don't see like belief in like change would be like, I think there's people that believe that climate change is a real thing, but don't want to like actually change, because there's unbelievable amounts of money that like lie within that farming, and so many, like, a lot of it's like family, like it's runs through generations for so many years that like they would rather just keep that going because that's what their family has done for so long, that like if they were to try to, you know, plant less so that it's not so like harsh on the soil, then they have to look at how much they're going to lose in money that year instead of like maximizing their profits. And I think just from like the people that I've been around up there, like they realize what they're doing. They just would rather like justify it by like saying like, well, I'm helping out the rest of these people that with feed or whatever that they're growing, or just food in general for humans, like they're gonna justify that, and they also have the money that's gonna make them feel like, well, at the end of the day, I have a lot of money that I have to like make sure I keep making, or kind of doesn't.
That's why I believe in paying for eco-based services for our family farm, incentives, farm bill, things like that. That's another thing. I've been working on the farm bill from a faith perspective for 2 years now. But there are a lot of things and systems that we need to change, that we need people like you to making phone calls and stuff. I'm gonna go to the next slide, but you can talk to me after class. So anyways, plugging into faith action here. So Iowa Interfaith Power and Light, our mission is to empower Iowans of faith and conscience to take bold and just action on the climate crisis. So we have, you know, a widespread of supporters, including agnostics and atheists, because they believe in our theory of change and what we do, which is really cool. 4 focus areas: teaching and preaching, shocker, what is this? Faith, I should have edited it, faith-rooted advocacy. So we do lobbying at our state house. I mentioned I've been doing farm bill work, so that's national. We're part of an coalition called Clean Up Midian. Midian still operates 6 coal plants, and we'd like them to shut down, and we'd like Midian to help those just transition for the coal plant communities. Faith Farms and Climate, we're going to be changing, so is that Call to Climate Action is our faith integration program with college students that we've run, but that's changing. Faith Farms and Climate is when we go into rural communities and we ask farmers, how does your faith call you to climate action? And guess what? It does. So, how much time do I have?
You got 20 minutes till the end.
Dang it, okay. Well, no, not dang it, because that's plenty of time. I messed up the YouTube thing. Okay, so guys, we're gonna.
History, Mike.
Yeah. So, Clean Up Midian. So, on Earth Day, we held a rally. We've been working with a coalition for over 2 years now because Mid-American Energy does a lot of really good stuff. And yet they're still running some coal plants. And so, and that's polluting our air. It's polluting our water because they were trying to dump coal ash in the Missouri River. And so as a faith group, we decided on Earth Day to hold a rally. And our inspiration, we're interfaith, so this wasn't explicit, but have you guys heard of when Jesus turned the tables in the temple? Yeah, okay, that's my primary image of Jesus, so that tells you a lot about who I am. But so Palm Sunday was like the rally, like when Jesus, had his thing that was I don't want to say F you to the empire, but it was. And the next day, Jesus went to the temple and people were buying and selling. There's money exchanging hands in a holy space. And Jesus, what he did, he flipped the tables and said, this is not in my Father's house. And then he stayed and he teached. He stayed in the temple the rest of the day and taught why. And so to me, I've always liked the thought of turning the tables and inviting people in. So calling Mid-American out on their coal plants and inviting them in to work with us to help transition to a fully clean energy future and help those communities go through a just energy transition. So here's our video.
Energy, with one voice we say, clean up your act.
We believe that Mid-Am has the moral obligation to move beyond coal. They tout this renewable energy vision, and yet they operate one of the largest coal fleets in our state. Oh, we turned that table.
Mid-American operates coal plants on 2 of this nation's biggest waterways, the Missouri and the Mississippi River. What happens in Iowa does not stay in Iowa. Iowa coal plants affect the health of children nearby, as well as hundreds of miles away. While the many emissions of the Iowa coal plants impact an outside number of people of color who live near the coal plants here in Iowa, I call on Mid-American to become a better neighbor.
No one in this state should have to breathe dirty air because Mid-American wants to keep running their coal plants longer. And we can make our energy more affordable so that the energy burden is less on folks, because Mid-American is running uneconomic coal plants day in and day out that make them more money but cost consumers more than that clean energy, and that energy efficiency, that solar, that wind. So that's our challenge to Mid-American today. It's not enough to just make things work. They can make things better. And the solutions are right in front of them. They just have to be willing to work with us to do that.
So long as there is a single coal plant still polluting our air and our land, we will not be silent. We choose a healthy and sustainable future for the people, land, and creatures of Iowa. We choose to be responsible for God's creation that has been entrusted to us. And it is our prayer that Mid-American will finally make that choice too. Thank you. What do we want? Climate justice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want? Climate justice! When do we want it? Now!
And so that one, we also delivered a letter. I was not allowed on the premises of their headquarters. They knew we were coming. And it asked them to shut down their coal and also equip those things. The response that I got from Miriam was not great. They're starting to call coal thermal energy. But, you know, we made them respond to us. So we're still working there. Again, Miriam does some really great stuff, but you can hold that duality. You can call out and call in, because truly, I believe that majority of Miriam employees want this vision. It's just the people on the top. And I've been in a room with the president of Miriam, right?
Really?
So like, you know, we're working on it.
Yeah, so it's not completely demonizing
No.
Miriam, because there's some good things that they do for sure, but
Yeah, it's just you have to, sometimes people can do better always. I can do better. And this is a supporter of ours. This was done again for the coalition, but the Varley family put wind turbines on their property on their own years ago. So, and they did it motivated by their faith.
I'm Warren Barley. We're on the farm that I grew up on and where I've farmed most of my life. This farm has been in our family for 6 generations, and faith is what kept us going through all the hard times. And an integral piece of that faith is that we're stewards of this land. We're only here for a short time, and we have an obligation to take care of it and possibly leave it in better shape than it was when we got here. I'm very excited to have 3 electricity generating wind turbines on our farm. I feel like I'm helping to contribute to a proven solution. We're producing something here locally that we used to have to import. It's not oil from overseas, it's not coal from Wyoming. We're producing it right here in Adair County, Iowa. And that's a huge economic impact. They're essentially combines in the skies instead of combining crops where we're harvesting wind to produce electricity. And the cost of the feedstock for the wind turbine is 0. You have to pay for every load of coal that comes into that coal-fired power plant. Iowa is producing electricity from renewables. Not all of that's getting used here. A lot of that is going east and west of here to larger municipalities. But the coal that gets burned here, that coal ash stays here in Iowa. Heavy metals that are left behind when coal is burned stay here in Iowa. So in a sense, we're carrying a burden that we're not being compensated for that power that is going elsewhere to the power industry and homes outside of our borders. My message to the American Energy is I think you have a moral obligation to discontinue burning fossil fuels to produce energy. We can continue to use energy and be productive as a society without destroying the environment.
And we have a coalition and somebody pays for fancy comm stuff, so that's why they're all Miriam. So just really briefly, so who's heard of the Inflation Reduction Act that got passed? Yeah! So fun times. New opportunities for faith communities. So for the first time, there is a 30% tax rebate, direct pay, for nonprofits and faith communities that want to do solar, geothermal, and battery storage. There's a whole lot of other things that are energy efficiency, rebates for people, EV stuff. But the biggest thing is that these rebates are allowing, so when we got the quote for solar panels on my church in Urbandale, it was $120,000 to power our church with panels. And so 30% of that back makes something like solar panels on a faith community super accessible. And so it's a really big deal to have that. I want to show you the video on this, but this is Good Shepherd Lutheran Church in Decorah. They put on solar panels, they planted trees, and guess what? They did geothermal. So they dug in, and now they are pretty much net zero. And there's churches all over the state. One Source Solar is one that I know. They're in Ankeny. And so every once in a while I get an email from one of their guys telling me a new church that put on solar. There's Pentecostal churches in rural areas putting on solar. Fredsville, there's a tiny town just like I think north of Waterloo or south of Waterloo. They were like, how do we invest in future generations in our faith community? And they're like, solar. So there's some really cool opportunities. You can put panels on the ground and do short grass prairie, which helps with pollinators, or you can grow foods to go to the local food bank, right? So there's like some really cool things, and faith communities are slowly starting this. I did one dedication in Cedar Rapids, and I pointed to it and I said, this is what loving your neighbor looks like. And so this is my challenge to a lot of churches. And so if you're involved at your faith communities back home, you need to let them know about this stuff, because they might just be ready to take the chance to do something big. And a lot of churches, but you've heard the term like being the light on the hill. What do solar panels look like? That is a way to build community, show you care in some vastly new ways to do ministry and really be a part of your community.
And if you need a resource to help you with your own church communicating this stuff, you got it
100%,
right
I'll help
here.
you. I'm not an expert, but I know who to point you to.
There you go. Yeah.
So really, the most important action is to talk about climate change rooted in your why. You saw the statistics. You know statistics now aren't always the most effective way to share something. But talking about climate change rooted in your why and your story is the way that we impact hearts and minds. We can't change unless we share. And we say something, our personal stories on how it's impacting us and those who we loved. Those of you who experienced the derecho, tornadoes, or whatever things that made us go to our basement this year, that's common threads that you can talk about stuff. Are you afraid of, there's just certain things, or like you really love chocolate. Well, chocolate's being impacted by climate change. Coffee's being impacted by climate change. But here in Iowa, we've gone through some extreme weather together. Religion also, like I said, is a common thread between people. So conversations rooted in faith are powerful tools for climate action. To meet somebody where they're at, where the groundwork, where you're meeting in the middle is faith. I like to tell my supporters it's literally our superpower, because people listen. People listen. So climate conversations. I have another editing thing that I needed to do. So what's holding you back from having a conversation? Man, I love seeing that I misspelled things. Do you think sharing your story will have an impact? And what are common threads in your story, your faith, and your values that you have to offer? Yeah.
My biggest question when it comes to renewable energy is the practical application of it. Being when it comes to solar panels, the peak consumption, the peak generation doesn't match up with the peak consumption schedule, right? When everyone goes back home, charge their EVs, it's sunset, you don't generate any electricity, so you end up doing sort of net metering where you're relying on the existing power structure, whether gas turbine or coal power plant, to produce the electricity for you. Now, is that really the solution or the best solution we can find?
So when I've seen people's power bills that have that kind of stuff, they're able to cover it.
No, I'm not worried about the
but
cost.
like the best solutions we have, those are some of the best. We're in a crisis. We have hit multiple tipping points of no return. And if we keep, we don't have the silver bullet solution. So we have to do something. The biggest thing we could all do is reduce our consumption, stop getting new technology, stop using as much power, things like that. But that's not, unfortunately, people aren't doing that. So I understand, and there's other stuff like battery storage, you can't, like Warren Buffett should just put money into it and then we'd have like the battery storage, so then when you have your solars, like you can do that, but like, I hear you deeply, and yet we have to do something now and we can't wait.
Yeah, and also there's multiple ways of looking at, or
Yeah.
multiple possibilities of action. It's not just one thing. And we tend to focus on like a technological solution, but that's only one piece.
Yeah.
I think, I grew up in a town a little bit outside of Leeds called Gilbert, and a lot of the houses out there now are solar paneled. You can walk around the neighborhood and a lot of houses have solar panels on top of there, which was crazy because they did that when like it first came out. It's super expensive, so I was kind of shy. But now with like the tax, I think a lot of it too is trying to break people out of this mold of like trying to convince somebody they don't need a new phone, they don't need a new car, they just switch to an electric car and they don't need the whatever new cars on the market. That's definitely a hard thing with like things in my community, especially at a young age. A lot of people want the newest thing.
I know,
because it's like a trend, and it's like I need the newest phone. When really like all it does is maybe you get a tiny bit of better picture quality or whatever. But I have seen a lot of homes in that area and sometimes around Ames where their entire house is powered by solar. And they're also able, like you said, like batteries, they can store it in case of whatever goes wrong.
Yeah, and there's something with like EVs too, like you could pull power from the EV.
Yeah, there's that too, where like you've seen like new trucks and stuff. Where
I can't afford, actually I don't have charging stations.
Power your home for like a week if you don't have power, like the electric truck can, which I thought is crazy.
And what really would be beautiful is if we went to 100% renewable energies from our power companies, because that is the more equitable situation, right? For people in apartments, things like that. Like, But yeah, we need it. You and then you.
Another thing that holds me back, and I'm sure a lot of other people back, is like, I can do my part, I don't know, walking somewhere instead of driving, or, you know, recycling, not buying something new. But it's like, how much is that gonna do in the grand scheme of things when like there's 3 big companies producing, I don't know, like 75% of all pollution. So it's like, you know, the power of the individuals kind of seems so small.
Yeah.
In this large issue.
Yeah, and my challenge is like the power of the individual is like one of the things also that like grounds us into the work. So we do things and we create habits at home for our individuals, but you have to take it to the next level. So you need to advocate at the state house. You need to make sure you're voting for the people that share your vision and values for Iowa. Like, and that's hard because you can get apathetic and stuff like that because, I mean, don't even look at what recycling really, the back end of it, right? But it should always lead us to something more. It should be the jumping off point.
And also talking about it with your faith community.
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
We were talking about EVs earlier, and I'm just curious, is that really like something that could happen to where a lot of people could transition to an electric vehicle? Because I know there's a lot, mostly older people are not for electric vehicles. And that's also another thing I don't really understand is that kind of like the controversy because for me, a car is a car, you know, it's just something I don't really like fully.
It's, you know, like you do what you know, and or like you don't want to plan, like you still like can't plan out a trip with an EV to some areas. The mileage isn't good. I think it's the Lexus battery is supposed to be super, that's coming out in the next few years with a Lexus. So I think too, it's a thing of accessibility too, is like the Chevy Volts are like the more like cheap version of it, but and still, if you live in an apartment building, like how are you supposed to charge it? Does your work have a thing? So like there are some equity issues, especially with EVs in terms of accessibility and how you store things or how you charge it. But, you know, we'll get there, but I think EVs are going to be a bit slower just because, again, you can buy a used Honda and it's this thing. I mean, I come from the I drive it until it dies. Okay, I wanna just make sure, cause you're almost done. So your roots is your why. That's what keeps you grounded, that keeps you sustained for the conversations. And I really encourage you all to, whether it be your religious affiliation or your morals and values, whatever your North Star is that guides who you are, is to know your why. Because you can't get pushed over if you're grounded, right? I might not have all the answers, you heard that, but I know who to ask, but I know what I'm grounded in, and I will keep fighting for it. And that's what sustains me on days where I read a climate study. So iowaipl.org, but that's us. There's my email. I'm happy to have any conversations. I'm just going home after this, so if you want to talk to me afterwards. But I really hope that you take climate action, rooted in your why, and you're curious, and you go forth, and you change the world. So thank you for having me today.
Hey, thank you very much.